Good evening. This is John Warren, publisher of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, coming to you with our weekly program from the desk of the editor. I'd like to mention that San Diego's Voice and Viewpoint is the oldest African American publication in San Diego. We are adjudicated, and adjudication means that under the state government statutes, we have been acknowledged as a newspaper of general circulation, which publishes on a regular basis. And so those are the criteria in terms of adjudication being legally recognized. And so that means then that if someone brings a case in El Cajon and they've run a probate notice with the Voice and Viewpoint, then the courts can't complain about the location because the paper is right there in El Cajon at the courthouse. Same way we've been at all the courthouses until recently, and we're replacing some of our equipment. So we are in 17 cities, 89 zip codes, unincorporated areas of San Diego County. And we are the only African American newspaper publishing printed copy on a weekly basis for 66 years. That's what makes us an adjudicated newspaper, and that is the reference when we talk about our statute serving not only San Diego's African, but as our logo says, our African and African American communities. And so with that being said, so that we are clear in terms of who we are and what we do, we are online as well as print. We have news bites, we have newsletters, we have videos that we post as well. And so we are a multimedia publication in terms of what we do. And many of you have seen that, and you have some of your activities that have been covered. When we had the floods in San Diego, we were there live video in terms of the flooding taking place. We were there with Footnote 7 and Encanto. And so we have been there covering this community, not only from a media standpoint, but from the standpoint of town hall meetings and special events that we've done to keep our community connected. In that context, we do this program, and I'm happy that we are joined here by Dr. Leonard Thompson III, who is responsible for GOD Radio. And Dr. Thompson will tell you how to reach us on this evening as we do an open mic with some very exciting topics that we want to discuss.
Well, good evening, everyone, and good evening, Dr. Warren. If you would like to come in and join in on the conversation this evening, our number directly here is 858-251-6111. Again, that's 858-251-6111. And we are also online at godradio1.com, as well as we're online at Facebook at godradio1.com, as well as on YouTube, godradio1.com.
Okay, and so we have topics this evening that we would like to very much lead off with. And one of them I wanted to discuss, which is was up today in the Rules Committee of San Diego City Council, the whole effort by Sean Elo Oliveira, council member, to put a $5,000 a room tax on Airbnb bedrooms from the standpoint that, according to their figures, there are at least 5,000 people who own second homes in San Diego that they don't live in, and therefore those properties should be taxed. And the reality is that there's no relationship between those properties and the homelessness in San Diego County. I believe very strongly that aside from our own budget crisis, that the elements behind this legislative move, which will be heard again by the committee in January come before the full city council by March so that proposition can be put on the June 2026 ballot. I believe the hotel industry is behind that because the more people that use Airbnb rentals, the fewer people are using hotels at $300, $500, and $600 a night. And so I just think that these are things that we should look at because at some point you could have friends or relatives coming to visit you from out of town, and you know, they say that the idea is to make Airbnb unattractive for the people who own the properties. And you got to do a whole bunch of rental to be able to make a profit and still pay $5,000 per room, not per house, per room.
Now, when they say
That might
per
be
room,
rented.
are they saying that by year? So if you have a 3-bedroom house,
If you have a 3-bedroom, excuse me, property, and you rent that property and all 3 of those bedrooms are used, then that's $15,000 at the end of the year that you have to pay an additional property tax.
okay.
And the observation was made to me that there are some people in San Diego who have inheritance property, property that they might have inherited on the death of a family member as a part of generational wealth building. And what's happened in that scenario is, and sometimes they don't have the money to bring the property up to code to make it inhabitable. So they're paying on it, and the property is empty. And these kind of rulings, if they're going to affect properties, even if they're empty, then that can be a deterrent to that kind of generational wealth building.
Well, would you say that there should be some taxes, not on this general property, but property that is being used as Airbnb, that there should be some type of taxes that are in addition to, or do you agree that are you saying that there should be no
Well,
taxes at all?
I thought in the past couple of years that the city passed a tax on the Airbnb because folks were complaining, especially in the beach community, about the turnover, and some of the people who, of course, were coming in as guests were destructive and noisy and disturbed what the law calls the quiet enjoyment of people who live there permanently. So these are issues that we need to look at. But I want to move beyond that issue to another issue. And as I said, this is open mic, and you're welcome to call in if you have a question or comment. I'm concerned in terms of San Diego County. As I saw what happened in Grossmont School District, where effort was made to remove the librarians and just put one librarian over the schools. Students are talking about the harm and the loss. And I think libraries are still important. We had to fight earlier this year when we were going through the budget crisis because they wanted to close our libraries on Sunday and Monday, and which didn't make any sense. And we've heard from the library foundations, and the people talk about that every time there are budget cuts, they go for the libraries as if they're not necessary. And the libraries are important. And if you don't believe it, just take time to visit the Central Library, take time to visit Oak Park, take time to visit Paradise Hills, Breckenridge, and Malcolm X, which has a phenomenal media center there for young people that was donated with private funds several years ago. And just take time to look at it. I know the library played a major part in my life and development, even though, as I've said many times, I had to stand in the snow on a corner and wait for a bookmobile once a week, only to go inside this little, the equivalent to an RV with bookshelves, and go through an index and find whatever book, hopefully it was in the card index, and turn it to them, and then come back a week later to get the book, unless I could afford to take the bus fare to go what we call downtown to the Central Library, which today is a information conference center in D.C. With the Apple logo on the outside of it. So I
Well,
think it's important.
well, I think some of the concerns that people have, even with our libraries, is that they're being taken over by people that are homeless, that need a place to either shelter for the day, or that needs Wi-Fi or needs power, and so sometimes it becomes an uncomfortable place for you to be in because you're dealing with different smells and everything else of that nature. So I think that that's been some of the complaints.
Well, I think that over the years that has been addressed. I remember it was really outrageous at the old library down on East Street in terms of people coming in, using the bathroom for showering facilities, and and so many times that element will trash wherever they are. And so, I mean, I don't see that with the new library. I see most of our libraries are under control at this point. And I know that when we have extreme heat situations, many people are sent to libraries as cooling places because we don't want to have heat strokes, and not everybody has air conditioning, contrary to popular thought. And so I think libraries are so important. They remain important, and we need to be concerned, treat them with that respect. They've got not only books, they got videos, they got all kinds of things these days. And matter of fact, when my daughter and I did our StoryCorps interview, which aired last week, we did it at the Central Library. The people from StoryCorps came there and they set up to do it on location. So this library has phenomenal meeting facilities, and it's just great. And I was glad to see them build it after they built Petco Park first. And I was beginning to worry that they were going to miss the importance of a library. And so we just want people to be aware. We're moving toward budget time. We can be impacted again. We need to prepare and gear up to pay attention, folks, because right now with the shutdown that's going on with the government, we are facing some tremendous cuts by next week when the first comes around. Food programs are going to be cut. People are going to be impacted in terms of open enrollment, new health care, prices if the Democrats don't hold, and I hope they hold, and let the government stay closed as long as it takes to not give in and have all of our health care benefits wiped out just to appease a few wealthy people.
Well, well, let me ask you a question. When we talk about the government being closed and the stance on holding out for health care, how do you see it, the atmosphere being affected in the United States? Because it seems like they're trying to make the United States more and more chaotic, and we're starting to see very irrational, even more irrational thinking from the far right. People want to shoot up airports and all these things that are happening. Do you think the Republicans are really are they really doing it because they really stand on anything, or are they doing it so that they can create nationwide chaos and then they can declare martial law?
Well, you know what? The reasoning that they're doing it is not as important as what we can do to stop them from doing it. And I believe, as I've said editorially this week, that every elected Republican member of Congress from every district should have people organizing in that district with candidates who are going to follow, protect and defend the Constitution and remove those people from office. Now, if we can go from 5 to 7 million people in protests, and I write this week, now that we're marching, let's pray and vote. Because Trump made it very clear when he made the comment last week when asked about the demonstration, and he and his crazy little secretary, their attitude is, oh, they don't count. We don't care. I think we should show them that the masses do count. And the reason they say we don't count, folks, is because I can tell you statistically, coming from a career in politics, having run for and first been elected to office at the age of 28 in the nation's capital, I can tell you that people who hold office, people who do polls, people or orchestrate campaigns. They know, I'm saying, your habits. They know what you're going to vote for, whether or not you're going to vote, what your interest is based on what your income is. They profiled you just like they do jury profiles on some of these TV programs that we watch. They know if the candidate wears a nice suit and a nice tie, or if it's a man or woman. They got all of this stuff worked out. And the Republicans, over the past, Kamala Harris made the statement in her book, 107 Days, when she was doing an interview with Rachel on MSNBC. And this is a profound truth I haven't heard anyone else state. She said, this planning has been in the making for decades. For decades. For decades, the Republicans have developed algorithms for the use of redistricting so that they could draw lines in such a way that based on their profiles, they know who would vote. Mm-hmm. And so we can have districts with a lot of black people. But, you know, in the election, even with the last time Obama ran, and even with Harris's run, we've had black folks that did not vote or took the position, the black men, well, we're not going to vote for her and all that. You missed the point. They missed the point. And so we have been targeted as predictable. And what we need to do now, before we are all homeless and hungry and standing in soup lines like the 30s, we have no excuse. We can read and write where our parents and grandparents couldn't. We can register to vote without somebody holding a gun and threatening to shoot us or put us out if we vote. We have a right to do all of this, and that's why we're pushing so hard for Prop 50 here in California, because the truth be told, and they're talking about North Carolina is picking up an additional Republican seat in addition to the 5 they plan to get in Texas. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is, folks, that it's not just black people. Whites and Latinos are affected too. The 5 districts that are being that were created in Texas, 2 of them have belonged to black members of Congress. One to Sheila Jackson Lee, who died, and they refused to hold a special election. And another one was for a gentleman. I can't remember his name. I can see his face. He had been a mayor of Houston and served in the legislature, and he was well,
Green?
I don't remember his name, but I do know that after they finished redrawing these boundaries, those 2 districts had some degree of consolidation, and it's going to be harder. Al Green and Jasmine Crockett, they're going to be safe. But in California, remember, the states with the largest congressional delegations are California, New York, and Texas. And in California, we have 52 seats in Congress. 12 of them are held by Republicans. We are looking to reduce that at least by 1 in San Diego County if we can get Darrell Issa out. And there is no reason that we can't go after it. And I believe that it's not going to just be a color vote, because the poverty and hardship knows no color. And there are white and Asian and Latino people, Social Security recipients, food assistance, the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, EBT. People of all colors are benefiting from these programs. And when I was in Washington and vice president of a policy institute, I was in charge of a center that dealt with what was called social insurance and income security. And my specialty was looking at programs like welfare, workers' comp, disability, railroad retirement, longshoremen and harbor workers, federal government retirement programs, postal employees, all of these things that provided assistance to people, how they worked, how long people stayed on them, how the government was trying in so many instances to cut them, because before Obama, you remember that Hillary Clinton and Bill and Hillary, they tried to to do a thing in terms of welfare. And welfare is a program designed to provide assistance to people as a part of the safety net. And so, quiet as it is, there are more white people in America on welfare than black folks. And so this week we carry a story, and I'm not going to dominate this time, but this is so important. We got a story that's it's called The Immigrant's American Debt. It starts on the front page and it's online. And if you read this story, you will find that this story documents the amount of money that immigrants, many of whom are illegal, contribute to this economy. An example, immigrants who will never collect Social Security, those who are working illegally, will fake Social Security numbers. Social Security is still being collected on those jobs based on that fake number. That fake number generates $25 billion a year that goes into the Social Security Trust Fund. And those people will never get any of that money. That's very significant, okay? And so the taxes that are paid in terms of other jobs and positions that they will not get. And so contrary to this president talking about health care for illegal aliens, which is a total lie, these people are contributing to society not only in terms of dollars, but also in terms of their work ethic and their product.
Exactly.
Okay.
And truly, without them, we would not see. There are a lot of jobs that people do not want to do that they do, and they do it very, very well. And I think that we have to continue to be vocal about what is taking place. I want to just ask some questions because since we're at the White House, a lot of things are happening legally from the Supreme Court. But what troubled me today is that Trump commuted George Santos' sentence, and I'm trying to say that. Does that mean that this? It seems at this point, anything that's Republican, no matter if it's legal or not, we're just going to say it's good.
Well, we know that Santos got a 7-year sentence for fraud, and he did some really wicked things. It was Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was his partner in the Congress, who pursued and begged the president for the pardon. That is the kind of thing that if Obama had done it, they would have been trying to impeach him. Well, you can't impeach Trump anyhow because he controls the House, and all impeachment has to start in the House. And he's got the Senate messed up, so and he's got the Supreme Court in his hip pocket because they passed a law indicating that he had immunity. He could just, like he used to say, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nothing happened. He's just about at that point. And so Santos joins that whole list of some 1,600 people, I believe, from the destruction at the Capitol who have been commuted and set free. Some of them have committed additional crimes since then and been rearrested. But it adds to why we celebrated No King's Day, because the computation is there. And so he commuted the sentence. He's out, and I don't know what he's going to do, but let's not forget that the very president commuting the system was indicted and convicted of 33 felonies himself.
Yeah.
And you think that's something. Now Trump is insisting that the Justice Department reimburse him for $230 million for legal fees for the cases such as Jack Smith going after him about the documents being in Mar-a-Lago, and he wants that money to be given back. All of these moves are unprecedented, and all of these moves are a part of the master plan of the guy that Trump put in charge of the Office of Management and Budget. And so I don't think we should keep on watching Trump as much as we need to look at getting rid of the people who are silently giving their consent. We have judges here in the 9th district where we live who okayed the National Guard being federalized by Trump and sent into Portland. And fortunately, because of the way the court system is structured, the Court of Appeals can sit as a full body in what they call en blanc, and they can reconsider this because this decision was by a judge that Trump appointed was so outrageously wrong. You are overriding the sovereignty of a state when the Constitution makes it clear that all rights not specifically given to the states, to the federal government, are reserved to the states under Article 10, and that includes welfare and the care for the people within the state. And there are only certain emergency situations. So he has violated all of that and sent the National Guard in, and I believe it's going to be overturned, which would be a wonderful thing. I'm not concerned about him going after Comey or Bolton or any of those people who were part of his administration who drank the Kool-Aid while they were there. Because I don't want anyone to forget that James Comey knew better when he announced 2 weeks before the election that Hillary Clinton was a subject of interest by the Justice Department, which further damaged her chances of getting elected. And not only is he getting payback now, but his daughter, who worked in justice, is being pursued and prosecuted by Trump. Yes, Trump got an indictment against Letitia James and Fannie Wills, but those cases are not going to go anywhere because at the end of the day, there's got to be trials. And if he tries to get a jury to vote his way, that is a major felony offense in itself called jury tampering. And so I know he thinks that he can't be brought up on charges, but I like the one Senator Whitehouse of Louisiana, who I think he's from Louisiana. He made a statement when Pam Bondi was flexing her would-be muscle before the Senate. And the governor of Illinois has made the same statement that you people are not going to be in office always, and we will be here when you get out, and the actions will come. They will be taking actions against them. So our duty right now, don't get mesmerized by this foolishness. Our duty is to vote. Find the candidates and vote. Find the candidates and vote. We got a local city council member that's going to run against Darrell Issa, Marty Von Woolpart, a Democrat. If she's a Democrat and she's going to the House to help us gain control, then we vote for her. And we don't end up having multiple Democrats fighting over a seat that lets some Republicans sneak in. All right? And we need to do that. We anticipate there's going to be an interesting race out there. The young man who ran before and lost probably will run again. But I like to remind people that we need to look at the big picture. That's the only reason I vote for Sarah Jacobs. I would not vote. I don't care how much she comes out and smiles. Sarah Jacobs told us who she was when she first got elected. She does not care about our community. I believe the seat was bought with her grandpa's money, just like he bought her way into the Obama administration. And he might have bought to Susan Davis in terms of her retiring early so Sarah could run where there wouldn't be an opponent. And just for the record, Susan nor Sarah can sue me for what I just said because they were public officials and they are held to a different standard. So those of you running to look about a lawsuit for slander allowable, please speak to your attorney first and do your homework so you won't embarrass yourself.
Well, one of the things about it is that, but also looking for the greater good, and we need as many Democrats to turn the tide. And so we might not always agree with everybody that's in there. We might not even like all of their politics, but we do know that they're going to serve a position for us that we need to turn the tide back to some civility and some justice and some fairness. And so I tell people that you might not like a certain person, but that person holds a position that we need at this point. And so we need to go out and vote, because if we don't vote, the alternative is they're stacking the deck and it will make it even worse. One of the things that, Dr. Warren, that really bothered me was the No King's Day protest. And when the No King's Day protest, we said that it was out there like that, but they then said that it was Hate America, you know.
Well, we got to qualify so people know who the they.
Yeah.
The they being the MAGA folks, and they can say they hate America all they want, but that never before in the history of this country has there been such a consistent outpouring. Demonstrations in all 50 states, whether they were large or small, big cities, small communities, and the invisible people who were organizing. They're not just stopping with people marching at this point. They are preparing for the long haul, all right? And that's why Trump is trying so hard to manipulate, control, the redistricting to see if they, because right now he knows that he would lose in the House. And if he loses the House in November of 2026, that all bets will be off in terms of people going after him. We have a chance to also take Senate seats because the way the Congress is organized, the House of Representatives has to run every 2 years, and the 100 members of the Senate, which comes from each state having just 2 senators, no matter how their size. So that means that California, Texas, and New York got 2 senators, just like Utah and Nevada, which are smaller places. But the significance of this scenario is it should not go unnoticed that the Senate runs in thirds. 1/3 of the Senate runs each election, 4-year election cycle for a 6-year term. And so just like the problem right now on them getting this bill passed for the supplemental is that it takes 60 votes in the Senate. That means it has to be bipartisan. And right now, everything that comes down to the wire is 50-50, and the vice president, as president of the Senate, is the one that's casting the tie vote because you can't get Republicans to shift. And just let me say this while we're dealing with the Congress briefly for a moment. You have this young lady, I always forget the way to pronounce her name, from Arizona, who ran in a special election and took her father's seat because he died as a congressman. And Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, for now going on 3 weeks, has refused to seat her. And this is in spite of the fact that 2 Republican members were elected, and he swore them in the same day. Now, as long as he's held her back, she can't hire staff. She doesn't have access to the office. The building is shut down, and she can't do any work. But here's the reason I keep reminding you of why he won't swear her in. She is a Democrat, and so far 217 members, some of them Republican, have signed a discharge petition to get the Epstein papers released. She has sworn that when she is sworn in, that she will be the 218th signature. And when 218 members of Congress sign a discharge petition, the Speaker of the House is bound by the rules to bring the matter up for a vote, which will force the Republicans to stand before the public on the Epstein file. They can't stand there and say yay and nay. Every vote will be recorded, and the pressure will be on. And so this is why, and I was glad to see today that the Attorney General of Arizona has finally filed a lawsuit against Mike Johnson in the House of Representatives. I've been saying for the past 2 weeks, 2 of the 3 weeks, that, this goes back to what happened with Adam Clayton Powell, the black congressman from Harlem. Powell was expelled from Congress under allegations that he was misusing funds and had beautiful women traveling with him. Oh, so much more has happened today, and people are still in their seats. And when they kicked him out of Congress, they held a special election in New York, Harlem in particular. And the people went to the polls and reelected him and sent him back to Congress. And so then Powell sued the House of Representatives. At that time, the Speaker was a man named John McCormack. And so the forever Supreme Court case is Powell versus McCormack, in which case the Supreme Court sided with Powell and the people of New York that he had a right to his seat. Now, he didn't do much about that because the way they really added insult to injury, they put him back on the committee that he had chaired as the most junior member. And that was just too much humiliation for him, because I worked for the committee at the time, and he never came back. He never attended another meeting. He never did. And so now we got history repeating itself. We've had so many breaches of ethics, unbelievable breaches of ethics and protocol in the House and the Senate, places that were held by people of character and position, and now is just ruffians that shouted out at President Obama when he was giving a State of the Union address. Unheard of. Yeah, they finally censured the guy, but it took forever to do so. And so we have got to pay attention, folks. And let me say, as I'm talking about attention, right now we have a situation with our Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Nash Weber, who comes from San Diego, who taught at San Diego State for over 20 years, who was one of the leading members of the San Diego Unified School Board, who got elected to the State Assembly as the first person elected from south of L.A., and I know because I ran 3 times and didn't get elected. And she went to the Assembly, and she became Secretary of State. And she is one of the most vocal and active Secretary of States in the country. Yesterday, I participated in a conference, a Zoom call with her, in which she reminded people of all the things that they could do in terms of voting. You have a right to register. You have a right to vote. If you are homeless, you can still vote. If you are ex-felon, you can vote. If you're in county jail, you can vote. The only time you can't vote is if you're in a federal facility. But if you're not in a federal facility, you can vote. And you can, and registration to vote for November 4th ended yesterday, but you can register even on November 4th and in a sealed envelope, and your ballot will be counted. And so here they are gutting the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It's under attack again. In 2013, they already took out much of the oversight, just opening it up. And so, many of you are too young to understand this. And you've heard names like Fannie Lou Hamer and how she was a sharecropper, and she fought the Democratic Party in the state of Mississippi and got recognition. All of this stuff is so important in terms of history. And there was a time that there was what they call a poll tax. So you couldn't vote unless you paid a tax because you owned property. That was to keep the masses from the polls. And then they had a situation, if you were black and you showed up to vote, they would have a jar of jelly beans sitting on the table, and they would ask you how many jelly beans was in the jar. And then in some cases, they would ask you to recite the Constitution in English. And I remember one case where the person, after they recited in English, the poll worker, who of course was normally some ignorant redneck trying to uphold the Confederacy, if you will, asked the person to recite it in German, and the person said, "Do you speak German?" They said, "No." So, I mean, we've been through all these fights, and we're turning full circle. Trump is trying to get the troops stationed so that their presence will be an act of intimidation going toward the elections, and it'll be commonplace by then. So he's trying to wear off the future shock right now. Everything this guy is doing. And meanwhile, CDC has been decimated, and so 1,000 people fired, 700 called back. Uh, our governor has put forth special money and to help people in anticipation of the November 1st crisis. The shutdown is going to continue, folks. It will be here for Thanksgiving. It will be here for Christmas. I don't know how long it's going to go. But I know one thing, if it takes till hell freezes over, the Democrats should not budge, because the moment they make a deal, all of our worst nightmares will accelerate. And so don't listen to the stuff about the Democrats are holding the key when Mike Johnson, in the midst of a shutdown, sends members of Congress home. My question is, how is it that essential people, TSA, air traffic controllers, and all these people who work in this country are working without pay at the same time that the Republican members of the Congress are getting paid and not working?
Yeah.
Something wrong with that picture, right?
And one of the things that, and they're building a new ballroom at the
Oh, we
same
were
time.
going to get to that.
But let me just ask you this question, Dr. Warren, which is a great concern to me, is that if I'm an air traffic controller and I didn't, manage my money well, and I don't have any way to buy gas, I don't have any way to pay my mortgage and everything else, how can they force them to go to work if they don't give them means to go to work?
Well, that's your problem. Because if your agreement as an essential person says that you have to work and you don't show, then from their standpoint, the reasoning doesn't count. You get terminated. And their goal is to fire at least 10,000 people as they further reduce government. Mm-hmm. And even if we got them out next year, it's going to take years to recover from the harm and the damage that's been done, and it is being done every day. Mm-hmm. And the tearing down of the east wing of the White House to build a ballroom. The White House hasn't been under physical destruction since the War of 1812, when the British came in and got close enough to burn it. And here we are with this idiot wanting to build a ballroom and turn the White House into an extension of Mar-a-Lago. Okay? And so people should look at it. The 9/11 terrorists couldn't get to the White House. But the president that you elected is doing the damage for them. And it's a sad day to watch part of that building being torn down to build a ballroom, and that's going to cost over $100 million. And now Trump is talking about maybe he's going to give some of the money from the Department of Justice to cover the cost. But the government is not his private piggy bank for all of this stuff that's going on, folks. And there are some people can afford to deal with that, and some people can't.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that's just really just disheartening is that while the government, as I say, as the government turns, it seems like there's no real concern about real American people that are suffering day by day. We've been hearing that even the governor is making provisions to activate the National Guard in areas of for food distribution and helping with feeding San Diego and everybody else, just to literally help with providing service and service in the community because the need is going to be so great.
Well, he is, and those are conditions under which the state militia, being the National Guard, can be used. And it's a fair and appropriate that he would do so. Mm-hmm. Floods, disasters, fires, all those things, they make sense. And so we have people that we have to feed, we have to help. This state is not going to let people starve, and so we're gonna address it. And our sense of neighbor to neighbor is not going to let people starve.
Yeah.
Okay, and so all of this part is very real. But in the midst of this, it heightens why we must vote for Prop 50 on November 4th, because that's the beginning of the key to stopping this stuff. That's the beginning of the key. And so we can't get distracted with whether or not Trump's going to meet with Putin or what's happening in Gaza now. That we knew once that they got all the hostages out, they were going to come back and try to complete the destruction of Gaza and the genocide and the annihilation of people. We all knew that was going to happen. Hamas knew that. That's why they held on to them for so long. Okay, so these things are real. We all know that no matter how many times Zelensky comes to meet with the president, he is not going to give him long range missiles.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to talk the talk, but he is not going to do anything against Putin.
Mm-hmm.
He's already established that.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a question, and some people are looking at it about what's going to happen. I mean, the real goal is to cripple NATO so that when Russia does move on one of the Article 5 countries or China moves on Taiwan, then we are forced into a battle under Article 5 because we have to protect and defend. And so then we're moving toward World War III. I mean, there's so many scenarios out there. And I think that we need to pay close attention to government. We need to pay close attention to preparation. You know, in Israel, everybody has a gas mask. Everybody is prepared. We're not building any shelters. But you got Army surplus places here, folks. I think you ought to pick up a mask. I think you ought to see if you can get a hazmat suit you can have at home. I think you ought to look at your supply canned goods. I think churches ought to be building pantries for people who don't have them. You need to lay in some blankets and pillows, and you can get some carts and stack them up and water and be prepared for what's coming. This is real, and it is coming, folks. It is coming.
So Dr. Warren, I think it's really important that we pause at that point to reiterate that we have lived in the comforts of America for years, and all we've known is that we have not really seen personally real war on our own territory. We've seen attacks and things of that nature, but really being attacked with bombs and everything else of that nature. And I think that we have to begin to look that we are making ourselves in this state very, very vulnerable. Not only are we taking on countries, but we're also now taking on directly the drug lords, and we're literally ostracizing the countries that are around us. And so now it's just kind of like, if we think you're wrong, we're going to blow you out the water. You know what I'm saying? No questions asked. There were drug boats. And I'm just concerned because have they yet recovered any drugs?
Well, let's understand something. I think before we jump the gun on that, the cartels, at least 10 years ago, start building submarines that were designed to hold just one person and to pack every inch with drugs. Our drone capability has improved. At first, we were just relying upon the Coast Guard, and they were only able to see surface vessels. Now we've gotten more sophisticated, and this is not the first one that they've blown out of the water, and they're going to blow more out of the water. I mean, back when Chuck Norris was making movies about going into South America fighting the cartel, they were using the drones to bomb the poppy fields and the plants and the whole thing. So that part is gonna pick up, is gonna stay with us. I just think we need to pick the battles that we can fight. Mm-hmm. All right, because if people weren't buying drugs, then they wouldn't keep sending them. Mm-hmm. So people are buying drugs. You know, if people weren't, feeding McDonald's and Jack in the Box and all these places with prices getting so ridiculous, then they wouldn't keep selling the stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think this shutdown and the crisis is going to create in terms of food and shelter, a lot of people are going to have to change some lifestyle and social habits.
Yeah, and then with the thing about is being prepared. I remember back in the day that you had the disaster kits that you all had made available and that people can buy. But now is the time, in real talk, everyone, is that we do need to start preparing ourselves with water, with canned goods, with non-perishable items, with backup batteries, with things that we are going to be able to hunker down and stay in, just like when we had the pandemic and people had to stay at home and you weren't able to get out as much. I thank God for the older generation that you go to the house. I was just talking to a young person the other day, and they said, if you come to my house, there's a refrigerator in the kitchen, there's a refrigerator in the hallway, there's a refrigerator on the patio, and then in the garage, there's 3 freezers full of food. You know, because older people prepare that look, we don't throw nothing away. You know, if it's left over, we'll freeze it. We'll come and get it another day. And the funny thing about it, you could go over to most older people's home, and you could walk in and say, look, I sure could use a thing of greens. And they're like, oh, go to the third freezer. It's marked and it's already dated. Just go and take it out and thaw it out. It's there. And so we have to begin to prepare ourselves for lack because we've had so much abundance. Now we have to prepare ourselves for lack. And as African American people, we've experienced the lack.
Well, Dr. Thompson, I appreciate all the freezers and refrigerators, but I can tell you this, that if a person has a home and they got that, then you need to invest in one of those generators because let the power go, like the disasters that we've seen with the floods or a quake, and all that food will spoil and be gone.
Yes.
And if you've got the generator, we have a generator in our building. We have a brand new generator we never use. It's gasoline powered. One of our members gave it to us. But I remember the days when we were back on Euclid that someone hit the main power box and knocked out power through that whole quadrant. And if we hadn't had a generator, which we set outside the back door and ran extension cords to our computers, we were still producing our product on time. But we had prepared for that. And it's interesting that you mentioned survival bags because Pastor Jerry and I, we did this 25 years ago. And what happened was we bought a lot of supplies. We created a commercial and put it on the air long before the internet. And we sold survival bags to schools and churches. And the problem was that the product had a 5-year shelf life. And at the end of 5 years, then those things needed to be recycled. And most people did not want to pay to replace and it was the survival, it was the Coast Guard approved food bars and water packages and all that, along with thermal blankets and flashlights and a whistle if you were stuck, and just all kinds of things we anticipated. Gloves if you were helping someone, like surgical gloves so that you didn't have contact with body fluids and the whole bit. And so when they had the big Northridge quake, the people came to us to buy some supplies because they couldn't get them, even though they had a place up in the L.A. area. But the downside of that was if you took a truckload up like in the L.A. or someplace, unless you had people with shotguns that were armed, when you start trying to sell those things to people who could afford them, you were going to have to shoot somebody because they were going to try to take it from you.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of elements. We anticipated the children could be on a bus, so we had a special kit for the buses so that if one was trapped on a bus, they had a whistle, they had a light stick, and they had food and stuff. A bag was on the bus to accommodate the number of seats and children. So we did all of these kinds of things. And most of us here have no idea of the County Emergency Service Office, who the people are. Most of us people of color have no people registered to be a part of those emergency first aid teams that get activated.
So someone said, so are you a strong proponent of solar power and having solar generators and battery packs that could help you when the power goes out or the grid goes down?
I'm a proponent of whatever you can afford to have. And you know, if you're homeless living in a tent, you can forget solar. The government has not made provisions for most apartments in terms of the owners to put solar panels on them, even though they're putting it every place else. So, you know, we have to get involved and advocate for what we want and fight for it if it's going to benefit us, and not just sit back and assume that people they're going to provide for us because that's the right thing to do. I've lived long enough to see in crisis people provide for themselves, and if you don't get it, that's your fault. And we got to overcome that if we return to helping each other, which we used to do, especially people of color.
And one of the things about it is that, again, it is going to take the activation of us coming together, our churches, our community, and just the neighbors. Before, back in the day, we would understand our neighbors and we would know our neighbors. Now we're so caught up with the rigmarole of life that many of us don't even know our neighbors. We just see them in passing and we wave, but we really have not stopped long enough to build relationships in a lot of the communities, and that's going to be definitely important as we go through these next seasons.
Well, California is like that. Statistically in California, I found years ago that most people move or sell their properties about on an average of every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so some who stay long term are really unusual in terms of doing that. And because it's such a melting pot, a lot of people don't want to know their neighbors. They don't even bother, as opposed to back east where I remember in D.C. where Trump put people on the street. There was a time about 20 years ago that people organized neighborhood watches in Washington, D.C., and they got out and marched in their neighborhoods unarmed against the drug dealers that were seeking to take over the community. Mm-hmm. And entities like the FBI and the DEA and all of these components, they voluntarily brought buses and manpower to march with those people in terms of helping. It wasn't no martial law. They were just concerned that community folks were dealing with something that they weren't equipped to deal with, and they came out to help. That's much different than the way the attitude is today in terms of Trump.
Now, one of the things that, and this my closing statement, is an action plan. I'm seeing a lot of our communities now, and especially families, are starting to have family conversations about if we have to depart from a place. I remember when we were having the fires and everybody was being pushed out and everything else of that nature. I remember my father saying, "We're headed to the water, and this is where we're at. And we got supplies, we got the mobile home, we got this. If push come to shove, head to the water." And then I'm talking to other relatives that are saying, if we have to leave this part of the country, where will we go? So they're starting to set up destination points outside of just this home city. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, they made a movie about that called Day After Tomorrow. And when the big freeze came, those who survived were driven to Mexico, and they showed people on the border begging Mexicans for admission. Mm-hmm. Even the president was down there trying to get in. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, those kind of things certainly will happen. I was in East County during the fires of 2004. And, of course, we saw people out there. It was like caravans going to the Ark. People had their llamas and their little ponies and all their farm animals and everything, marching out in their RVs, headed for designated points. People would painted their phone numbers on their horses and let them loose because they didn't have trailers to move them to avoid the fires. And one of the things I will say I noticed, I remember that at certain points like 7-Elevens, the state, somebody put tons of water in that people could just come and grab water. You remember that they had the Jack Murphy station, the stadium was a staging area, and people had so much stuff out there that the people who were displaced with the fires, they couldn't even use all of it. And the city got mad and didn't want to give it to the homeless people who showed up, and rather have the stuff go to waste and give it to people who need it. So we got a lot of things to deal with. I hope the night has been interesting. I appreciate those who have called in and left questions or comments. Please, you can check your Voice and Viewpoint. We're out tomorrow. We're already online. We are publishing news bites and newsletters at least 3 times a week. Our numbers are up. We're on TikTok and all social media outlets. We welcome hearing from you. And we always want you to remember that a people without a voice cannot be heard. Be prayerful.
Thank you very much, Dr. Warren. This is from the Desk of the Editor with Dr. John Warren. Y'all be blessed. God said the same. We'll see you next week. Next week we have our special guest.
Yes, we have Brother Quick Wilson, Wilson coming back, Chief Strategy Person for United Domestic Workers, as they are working diligently to get Prop 50 passed.
Yes.
And so we're excited about making another push in that direction.
All right, y'all be blessed.